MT is a 34-year-old woman presenting to the emergency room on a humid Saturday afternoon. As she is wheeled through the automatic doors, the medical staff doesn't need to check her vitals to know she is in grave danger. The sound of her breathing is the only thing audible in the trauma bay, a high-pitched, musical yet terrifying whistle. In medicine, we call this stridor. Stridor occurs when the upper airway is so inflamed and narrowed that air must force its way through a gap no wider than a straw. Every breath MT takes is a full-body battle. Her shoulders heave with the effort, her chest sinks inward with every gasp, and the skin around her neck pulls tight against her collarbone, a clinical sign called retractions. The nurses immediately move her to the critical care zone. Her skin is cold, clammy, and has a dusky, purplish-blue tint that seems to deepen with every passing second. This is cyanosis, cyan from the Greek word for blue, and osis meaning a condition. It is the visible manifestation of a body that is literally suffocating at a cellular level. The monitors are attached, and the EKG leads scream with a heart rate of 164 beats per minute. This is extreme tachycardia. Tachy meaning fast, cardia referring to the heart. Her heart is racing because it is panicking, trying to pump what little oxygen is left in her blood to her brain and vital organs before they begin to shut down. Her oxygen saturation, the SpO2, is 72%. To understand the gravity of that number, a healthy 34-year-old woman in this room has an oxygen level of 99%. At 72%, MT is in a state of critical hypoxemia. Her brain cells are beginning to die. The doctor leans in and asks her what happened. MT opens her mouth to speak, but no words come out. Instead, she begins to cough violently. With every cough, a thin, pink, frothy liquid bubbles up from her lungs and spills onto her chin. This is the hallmark of acute pulmonary edema. Her lungs are not just failing, they are physically overflowing with her own blood plasma. MT is drowning, but she isn't in a lake. She is standing in the middle of a dry hospital room. To understand how a healthy 34-year-old woman ended up in a life-and-death struggle, we have to go back exactly 6 hours to a sunny Saturday morning that started like any other. MT was a mother of two, a high school teacher, ironically a teacher of chemistry, and a self-described perfectionist. That afternoon was her youngest daughter's 5th birthday party. The house was decorated with streamers and a homemade cake was in the fridge. But as MT walked through the kitchen, she noticed a dull, white, chalky residue around the base of the dishwasher. These were mineral deposits, calcium buildup from the hard water in her neighborhood. MT wanted her home to be surgical-grade clean for the guests. She grabbed a gallon-sized white plastic bottle from under the sink. Bleach. Chemically, this is sodium hypochlorite, NaClO. It is one of the most powerful oxidizing agents available to the public. It works by ripping electrons away from the chemical bonds of stains and the cell walls of bacteria, effectively destroying them. MT mopped the floor with a strong bleach solution. The kitchen smelled clean, that familiar sharp scent of a public pool. But as the floor dried, she noticed the white calcium stains were still there. Bleach is an excellent disinfectant, but it is a base, and it is not effective at dissolving mineral scales. For that, you need an acid. MT knew this, but in the stress of the party preparations, her teacher brain turned off and her mom brain took over. Pressed for time, she remembered a natural DIY life hack she had recently seen on a popular home decorating blog. The post claimed that vinegar is the miracle non-toxic alternative to harsh chemicals for removing mineral stains. MT grabbed a large bottle of concentrated white vinegar, acetic acid, CH3COOH. She thought to herself, if bleach is good and vinegar is good, then using both must be even better. At 10:45 a.m., MT poured a generous amount of concentrated vinegar directly onto the wet, bleach-soaked floor. Instantly, she heard a faint fizzing sound. Tiny bubbles began to form on the surface of the tile. MT thought the miracle was working. She leaned in closer, her face just inches from the floor, to scrub at the stubborn spots. What she didn't realize, she had just initiated a high-energy chemical reaction. Sodium hypochlorite is stable in a basic environment, but when you add an acid, the chemistry changes violently. The acid donates a hydrogen proton to the hypochlorite ion, forming hypochlorous acid. But in the presence of chloride ions, this acid undergoes a rapid decomposition. The result of this molecular reorganization is the liberation of chlorine gas. Chlorine gas is heavy, 2.5 times heavier than air. Instead of floating away, it stayed low, hugging the tiles and forming a thick, invisible toxic blanket that filled the room from the ground up. As MT leaned down, she put her face directly into the highest concentration of the gas and took a deep, frustrated breath. In that one inhalation, millions of chlorine molecules entered her airway. This gas was famously used as a chemical weapon in the trenches of World War I because it sinks into the earth, forcing soldiers out of cover. MT had quite literally turned her kitchen into a trench. Initially, MT just coughed. Her eyes began to water, and she felt a sharp burn in her nose. She thought, wow, that's a strong smell, and she stood up, opened the back door, and walked into the garden to catch her breath. After 10 minutes in the fresh air, she felt better. Her eyes stopped stinging. She went back into the kitchen, wiped up the liquid, and continued decorating. This is the most dangerous stage of chlorine inhalation, the latent period. Chlorine is a slow burner. It doesn't always kill the moment you smell it. When MT inhaled the gas, it didn't just sit in her lungs. Lungs are moist, warm environments. The gas reacted with the water lining her mucous membranes to create a mixture of hydrochloric acid and hypochlorous acid. MT was now walking around her house, greeting guests and blowing up balloons, while microscopic amounts of acid were literally eating the internal lining of her respiratory system. The acid began to dissolve the lipid membranes of the cells lining her alveoli, the incredibly delicate one-cell layer thick air sacs where oxygen enters the blood. These sacs are incredibly delicate, only one cell layer thick, and the acid was now melting that layer. Imagine dropping acid on a thin piece of silk. That is what was happening inside her chest. By 1:30 p.m., as her daughter was opening presents, MT's immune system finally realized the scale of the damage. It responded with a scorched earth policy, triggering what doctors call a cytokine storm. Her body sent a massive wave of white blood cells and inflammatory signals to the lungs. This caused the tiny capillaries surrounding the air sacs to become leaky. Blood plasma began to pour out of the vessels and into the air spaces. This is why she was coughing pink foam. It wasn't just water, it was her own blood whipped into froth by her desperate attempts to breathe. MT was physically drowning in her own immune response. By the time she reaches the ER, she is in acute respiratory failure. The doctors perform an arterial blood gas, driving a needle deep into the artery in her wrist. This isn't like a normal blood test. It is painful and precise, designed to measure the pressure of gases directly from the source. The results are horrifying. NT's blood pH is 7.08. A normal human pH is 7.4. In medicine, a pH shift this large is usually seen only in patients who are moments away from death. This is respiratory acidosis, acid meaning low pH, and osis meaning a process. Because her lungs are full of fluid, she cannot exhale carbon dioxide. The CO2 is building up in her blood, turning it into carbonic acid and poisoning her from the inside out. The medical team has no choice. They perform an emergency intubation. They give her a powerful sedative to paralyze her muscles, ensuring she doesn't fight the tube. They slide a plastic breathing tube past her vocal cords and connect her to a mechanical ventilator. The machine is set to a high-pressure mode called PEEP, positive end expiratory pressure. The machine literally has to force air into her waterlogged, stiff, acid-burned lungs to keep them from slamming shut. But the damage doesn't stop at the lungs. On day 3 in the ICU, a new crisis emerges. MT's kidneys stop producing urine. Her creatinine levels spike. This is acute kidney injury. The kidneys are the most oxygen-hungry organs in the body, and because MT's lungs couldn't provide enough oxygen for the past 72 hours, the cells in her kidneys began to die. She is now in multi-organ failure. The doctors start her on CRRT, continuous renal replacement therapy. It is a form of 24-hour dialysis, a massive machine that does the work her kidneys no longer can. For 14 days, MT remained in a medically induced coma. Her family sat by her bed, listening to the rhythmic hiss-click of the ventilator, the only thing keeping her alive. Her children were told their mother was sleeping, but the truth was far grimmer. Slowly, the massive doses of intravenous steroids began to work. Steroids are powerful anti-inflammatory agents. They act like a fire extinguisher for the immune system. The fire of inflammation in her lungs began to die down. The fluid began to drain. Her kidneys, miraculously, began to show signs of life. On day 18, the doctors decided to extubate, to pull the tube out. MT's first breath on her own was a ragged, painful gasp. She described it later, saying it felt like trying to breathe through a thick, wet towel while someone was sitting on her chest. She survived, but survival does not mean recovery. A follow-up CT scan revealed the true cost of her mistake. A healthy lung on a scan looks black because air is invisible to X-rays. MT's lungs were not black. They were covered in white web-like patterns called honeycombing. The acid burns had caused permanent pulmonary fibrosis. Fibrosis meaning the formation of scar tissue. As the lung tissue tried to heal, it didn't grow back soft and stretchy. It grew back as thick, leathery scar tissue. Scar tissue does not exchange oxygen. It is dead weight. MT was wheeled out of the hospital connected to a portable oxygen tank, a machine that would become her constant companion. MT is now 36 years old. She can no longer teach chemistry. The strain of speaking for a full hour makes her pass out from a lack of oxygen. She cannot walk to the end of her driveway to get the mail without stopping 3 times to catch her breath. She has the lung capacity of an 85-year-old woman with severe emphysema. Every morning she has to take a cocktail of medications just to perform basic tasks like brushing her teeth. She thought she was being a good mother. She thought she was making her home safer for her daughter's friends. She didn't realize that the chemicals in her kitchen cabinet are more dangerous than the germs she was trying to kill. We live in an age of incredible chemical convenience. We have fluids that can dissolve grease, kill 99.9% of viruses, and make our floors shine like glass. But we have lost our respect for these substances. Chemistry does not care about your intentions. It does not care that you were cleaning for a birthday party. It only cares about its laws. Never mix cleaning products. Bleach and vinegar create a chemical weapon. Bleach and ammonia, often found in glass cleaners, create chloramine gas, which causes immediate respiratory arrest. Bleach and rubbing alcohol create chloroform, which can stop your breathing. If you are cleaning and you smell something sharp or you feel a tickle in your throat, do not push through it. Do not think you can finish the job. Leave the room immediately. Open every window. Fresh air is your only defense in those first critical minutes. MT's kitchen is sparkling clean now, but she would give anything to go back to that Saturday morning and leave the water stains exactly where they were. She would choose a dirty floor over a lifetime of struggling for a single breath. The story of MT is a reminder that the most dangerous things in our lives aren't always the ones we fear. Sometimes they are sitting right under our kitchen sink, waiting for one small mistake to change everything. Clean with caution, read the labels, respect the chemistry, because no kitchen is worth the air in your lungs. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself and be well.